in just the last 2 years alone. That's something that every Kiwi household is feeling the consequences of. Solar energy provides a renewable, cheap form of electricity generation for Kiwi households, but up until now the big barrier has been being able to finance that up front so that households can benefit from the savings of that. Today I'm announcing SolarSaver, which is Labour's comprehensive approach to accelerating solar installations across the country and making sure that more families can benefit from that. SolarSaver is a comprehensive policy. There's a number of parts to it. First, we're going to expand the range of financing options. We recognise that banks currently provide some financing options. We're also going to extend financing through the ratepayer assistance scheme and through the lines companies as well, and making it possible for lines companies to finance solar installations. We're going to be providing a kickstart grant to low and middle income households of up to $3,000 to help them with the transition to solar renewable energy. We're going to be focusing on the workforce, making sure that we've got the people we need to do the installations that we need. We're also going to be allowing for plug-in solar. That's going to help particularly renters bring their solar panels with them to their rental property, plug them straight into the power point and be able to enjoy the benefits of that straight away. So I'll hand over to Megan Woods to share some more details of the policies with you, and then we'll open up for questions.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, and thank you very much to everybody who's made this happen, and including the homeowner who's let us gather outside his house here today. Because at the core of the problem, this policy, the policy this seeks to solve is a very simple one. Solar power can save families money, but it's out of reach for most New Zealanders. As Chris has said, most New Zealanders can't access funding through their bank to make the savings on their power bills via savings. In fact, 4 out of 5 households can't access that bank finance. Sometimes that's because the loan repayments are too high, and sometimes it's because the homeowner doesn't have sufficient equity in their home, and renters are completely out of luck with the current packages that are available. So our SolarSaver changes that by introducing the new financing options for more New Zealanders regardless of where you live. It's a comprehensive solar package, and it allows for 2 new options, new choices for renters and also neighbourhood groups. That one of the things that we know is really important for making sure that everybody, including renters, can have the benefit of solar is community batteries. So within this package there is also an expansion of the community battery project. So let's break it down. The first new financing option is a loan through local lines companies. Lines companies own the poles and wires that we see around us here today. When households install solar and batteries, they take some of the load off the network carried through these lines, meaning that the more solar and batteries we have, line companies can defer or avoid costly network upgrades. Lines companies have a stake in helping families go solar, but today's rules get in the way of them doing that. We will change those rules so that networks can back household-owned solar and batteries on fair and affordable terms. The loan is attached to the property, not the person's, and repayments are collected through a dedicated charge on the property that will appear on the power bill. The second option, which you may have heard of, is the ratepayer assistance scheme, and this is the low interest loan administered through councils and repaid through people's rates bills. Like the lines companies, RAS loans are linked to your property, so if you sell your home it transfers to the new owner. Participation in both schemes are completely voluntary for councils and for lines companies, but the new rules will allow for those who want to offer these products to do so. For renters, Labour will make plug-in balcony solar available for the first time. They are safe, portable solar panels that plug straight into a wall socket. A standard kit can save a renter around $300 to $400 a year, depending on where they live. For those who need a little help getting started, SolarSaver includes a kickstart grant of up to $3,000 available to low and middle income households. That's more than enough to cover the cost of a plug-in unit or to reduce the size of the loan that you need to take on. Depending on the mix, it's expected to benefit around 25,000 New Zealanders who have previously been locked out of solar solutions. Additionally, as I mentioned, we'll invest $30 million in a new community battery fund to help neighbourhoods, marae, councils and charity install share solar batteries. A community battery soaks up power from the local rooftops during the day and feeds it back when people needs it most, at peak times or, increasingly, when the network goes down. It works just like a home battery, but it's shared across an entire neighbourhood or area, so everybody shares the savings, panels or not. All of this will be accessed through EECA's new one-stop shop. Just log on, get quotes from accredited installers and get matched with the best options for your situation. The grants, loan schemes and EECA support will all be up and running within 12 months of taking office, and the rollout will support thousands of new jobs across the country. SolarSaver will cost $160 million over 4 years, funded by repurposing the government's Gas Security of Supply Fund. National has chosen expensive fossil fuels that won't lower anybody's bill. Labor is choosing smarter investment with SolarSaver. Labor is all about better jobs, affordable healthcare and household bills you can actually pay. SolarSaver will help more Kiwis cut the cost of their power bills. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan.
How did you come to these figures, both in terms of the cost of the policy of that 160 million and of how much it'll cost in terms of that rollout of it?
Thank you. So in terms of the cost and how it is broken down, the $160 million, $20 million is in there as an underwrite for the lines companies to de-risk those loans. Then we have a package of $77 million, which will be the grant scheme that will be paid out to people to help them either with buying or up to $3,000 to either buy the plug-in solar or to reduce the loan they take on. Then there is the $7 million investment into the RNZ scheme, which is the equity investment from government to make them a partner. So that the figures are all relatively simple in terms of what the costs will be, and that's all broken down in the policy docs.
How will the plug-in work for renters when it comes to, do they have to seek permission from the landlords? What regulations are you going to have to change?
So that is part of the package that needs to be changed, and I'd like to add could have been changed at any time in the last 2.5 years. We've seen it happening all around the world. This is quite a standard piece of equipment throughout Europe. Germany has taken it up in droves. One of the changes potentially will be to the Residential Tenancies Act in terms of giving renters the right to plug it in.
Do we have enough of the plug-in systems and enough solar panels in the country if demand is high for this scheme?
So we don't have enough of the plug-in systems because they're illegal in New Zealand at the moment. The first order of business is making them legal, but there are a number of retailers who do want to start bringing them in. We're already seeing portable batteries become very standard pieces of equipment around the place now, that we need to change the settings so people can start selling them. But yes, supply chains in terms of the solar panels, this is something we've been talking to the industry about, what we need to do to gear up, both in terms of the workforce, which Chris touched on, but also the supply chains. But there's nothing like demand and a secure pipeline of work to make sure we've got what we need.
Sorry, so are the plug-ins illegal or are they just not regulated for at the moment?
Well, they're not legal under our regulations.
Can anyone import them and bring them in if you're an owner of a house?
No, they're not legal under our current regulations. Changes have to be made, as they have in every other country, in order for them to be used, and our commitment is to get on with that and do that work.
Why is that? Has there just not been any interest in them, or are they banned?
Well, the current government has not done the work that other countries have to make these usable in New Zealand.
Why should voters see this as a mere matching of National's policy?
We haven't just taken someone else's work and put our logo on it. What you'll see is, in terms of the residential assistance scheme, it's one component, but we've been thinking far more broadly. How can we work with the lines companies? What can we do to broaden the finance options that are available to people? But fundamentally, how do we get more people to have solar? What we don't want to see is a whole group of New Zealanders who need the savings the most locked out of this. And we've worked really hard to think about the issues around how do we help renters and how do we help some of the people that struggle the most with their power bills. This is fundamentally different than what National is offering.
It's important to note too, with the lines companies being able to offer finance to households, particularly those in isolated areas, it can be a double saving because it can also offset the need for lines companies to add extra capacity into more isolated areas, which can be very expensive. Those households ultimately end up paying for that. Instead, if they're financing solar and batteries locally, they can avoid having to do that. So it's good for the lines companies because they don't have to put a whole lot of extra capacity into more isolated areas, but it's good for the people in those isolated areas because they save twice. They save on extra lines charges, but they also save on the solar.
Can you see though how it could be seen by voters as being very similar to the National Party policy that they announced a couple of weeks ago?
No. I mean, look, the National Party's policy only deals with a small part of this, which is the ratepayer assistance scheme, where they've basically taken the work that Rewiring Aotearoa did. It's good work, and they've put the National Party's logo on it. This is a much more comprehensive policy, including dealing with plug-in solar, including dealing with community batteries, dealing with the workforce issues, which the current government have had nothing to say about, and actually helping people navigate the system. So by putting ECA in that coordinating role, we can actually help people, get their solar installations easier. It's a one-stop shop. It'll help them identify the best options for their household. So we've covered off every aspect, whereas the National Party just picked up some work some other people had done.
If demand is high, won't that drive up the cost of solar panels and end up costing households more, having to borrow more?
That hasn't been the case in other countries. In fact, if you look at Australia, the opposite's happened. As installation has scaled up, the price per install has come down. So there is real potential for us to achieve the same outcome here in New Zealand.
Do you think in a year you'll be able to get the regulations changed to bring in the new battery powers, make sure there's enough solar panels per house, make sure there's enough people trained in doing that? Isn't that a big ask in 12 months? Plus get councils on board with the ratepayer assistance scheme, lines company on board. That's quite a lot in 12 months.
Cards on the table. The regulatory side of things we're confident we can do. It is going to be workforce that's going to be the big issue here. That's likely, if people have to wait a while to get their solar installed, it's the most likely reason will be workforce, which is why we've put quite a heavy emphasis on that in the policy that we've announced today around training up the workforce and training them up quicker. So through micro-credentialing, for example, we can increase the workforce faster than if we use traditional ways of doing that. We're already short of electricians now. The apprenticeship boost announcement that I made last weekend will help with that, because if you're subsidising trainee electricians for 2 years rather than for 1 year, that'll help to retain more of those apprentices and get them to the workforce faster.
If the number of people take this up as you expect, how many people do you need in the workforce? And how many do we have now?
Again, that will very much depend on demand. We don't have an estimate of the number. We know that we're, I think it's about 600 electricians short already. 6,000 electricians short already. So we need to train more electricians. But there'll be other opportunities as well. Micro-credentialing means you can potentially have a mixed workforce of people who can do part of this work and help to accelerate that process. So that's why we've set out a comprehensive workforce strategy.
And like any program, we need to scale this up. We need to build the capacity. Not having the workforce is not a reason not to do it. It's a reason for a government to say we're going to back our people to get into these well-paid jobs that are going to be there for a long time. I think one of the things that you would have seen if you're asking for differences with National's package is no mention of that workforce. We've been thinking all the way through this, how do we have the skilled labour that we need in order to do this? It is absolutely part of our thinking.
Is the grid ready for an influx of connected solar panels?
Yes, and one of the pieces of work we've been doing with the lines companies is actually how this can be good for the grid. So this does stop the need to keep building out, whether it's residential or whether it is for our commercial and industrial customers as well. That actually it takes pressure off the grid. We of course will work very closely with the lines companies to make sure that we're getting that right. But one of the things that I know will be of great interest to many of the lines companies is the community batteries. Because these really do have the ability to take peaks off and to store for those times when the grid does go down and you need to be getting power to communities in the ever increasingly extreme weather events we're seeing.
Do you regret not announcing this, say, 3 or so weeks ago? before the National Party made their announcement to avoid any confusion between the two policies?
No. Look, if the National Party wants to try and desperately scramble together announcements to get ahead of the work that we've been doing, that's up to them. Ultimately, New Zealanders are going to see that this is a very well-researched, well-developed policy that we've been working on for some time. We've consulted extensively on it, so it wouldn't have been hard for them to find out that we've been working on this. Ultimately, I'm more interested in the substance than in the game of politics.
Rewiring Aotearoa has just put out a release calling this the electric election. Do you think that's a good description of what's going on? We're seeing a bit of a battle over solar and energy prices in general.
Well, I think if you consider the two blocks of parties, those currently in the opposition and those currently in the government, only one of the sides of politics actually has a consistent track record of supporting electrification. The other side is much more interested in supporting fossil fuels. If you want to get the country electrified, then you need to change the government at this year's election, and voting Labour is the best way of achieving that.
Solar is growing in popularity worldwide. In China, it's booming at the moment, basically, in terms of exports of solar panels. Are you concerned that New Zealand might be left behind and demand will be so high around the rest of the world that it'll clog up supply chains and we won't be able to get them here?
No, I mean, we know that there's an abundance of solar panels on the international market at the moment. Now is a really good time to be installing solar. The big constraint is not going to be supply, it's going to be supply of labour, and that's why we've set out the workforce strategy.
But actually making sure that we do get our share of international supply chains, it's important that we have consistent and predictable pipelines of work, and this is why actually the government getting in there, backing solar and putting it as a priority for New Zealand will ultimately be good for New Zealand accessing the products that it needs to.
Can it be sold back to the grid, or does it only go back to the community batteries?
Oh, it absolutely can be sold back into the grid in terms of the way in which it will work, that you will sell back either to a retailer, you may even sell back to your lines companies. We're seeing some innovation around that now, and we actually see further ways for people to reduce the payback time on their investment is getting involved in virtual power plants. So this is all about how you can have that two-way flow between the household and the grid. This is part of the solution for our energy system, as well as lowering people's power bills.
In terms of those loans, have you talked to the lines companies about
Yes.
them?
Some.
Are they on board with it? Are they, given the admin, it will be involved?
So ECA will be the shop front for it. We're not expecting the lines companies to set up a lending arm. That is what the funding is there for ECA, to be the place where someone will go and say, I want some solar panels and a battery, and it would be, ECA would say this is the right kind of technical kit for your house and here are some finance options for you. So we have spoken to some lines companies. They can certainly see some merit in it for their networks.
And on that $160 million over 4 years, are you confident you got your numbers right? Or is
Yes.
National going to add this to your hidden bill?
We have our numbers right. It's pretty simple mathematics. There is subsidies for people, that is $77 million. That is up to $3,000 per person. There is a $20 million underwrite. There's money for ECA to set up the shop front. There's nothing complicated about these costings. We are absolutely confident in them.
The basic financial proposition is pretty clear here. The National Party wants to spend money subsidising gas. We want to spend money getting solar panels on people's roofs so that they can experience the benefits that come from that much more quickly than they otherwise would.
I think what National should be talking about in terms of costings is the fact that it is not prioritising New Zealand households and communities to help them get solar into their homes. They're tinkering with some regulations and putting their name on someone else's policy, but they're not actually stumping up and supporting Kiwi households.
They still want to get solar panels on people's houses, as do you. Would you consider working together to get something done before the election?
Absolutely, they could have at any time over the last 2.5 years, and we would have voted for it, as we often do.
Everything that we've set out in our policy is stuff
Yeah.
that the National Party could have done at any point over the last 2.5 years. I welcome their sudden interest in solar, which they haven't had for the last 2.5 years that they've actually been in government and able to do it. But they could go further. They can take the whole policy if they want to, because it's a good policy. It's much better than theirs.
Are you going to go through with the LNG terminal if you're elected?
We've been very clear, no. Ultimately, though, the one thing that I haven't said is what we would do with any contract that they may sign between now and then.
And what would you do?
Well, of course, it depends whether they sign a contract, and if so, what the nature of that contract is.
Just on another issue in the Herald today, details of the Prime Minister's handing over of some of his security portfolio to Mark Mitchell. What did you think about that? Would you do that if you were Prime Minister?
I thought it was an unusual move. The Prime Minister would need to be across all of those details anyway. It is integral in the job of being Prime Minister that you need to be on top of those national security concerns. You need to be briefed on those regularly. You need to have that information regularly all of the time. So I'm not sure what extra value they'd be getting by having another minister doing that.
And would you have done that? Would you? Luxon seems to be saying that it was because of his workload that he handed that over. Is the workload of Prime Minister too much to also be Security and Intelligence Minister?
Absolutely not. No other Prime Minister has had that difficulty. I think there's something the Prime Minister has not done, which was recommended by the Royal Commission into the March 15 terror attacks, which he should do, which is establish a dedicated national security agency within the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet with a dedicated national security advisor to help oversee and coordinate those things. The work to do that was in train when he took over the job. He cancelled all of that, hasn't done that. That's still work that needs to be done. The Royal Commission had very good grounds for making that recommendation.
And our OCR decision today, you want to take any bets on what it might be?
I know the about 75% I think probability from the economists that the OCR is going to go up. I'm not quite as certain as they are about that, but I think we all just wait and see.
Do you think solar is a viable alternative to LNG?
Solar is certainly the way of the future for New Zealand. It's a big part of our energy future. Renewable energy is New Zealand's overall best option. Solar's one of those, offshore wind, obviously making the best use of our hydro lakes, geothermal energy. We have much better options than expensive imported gas.
But this is not seen as a straight swap out for LNG. The money we're repurposing, and we're talking about there, is the money the government has said they're going to give as subsidies to oil and gas companies for renewing oil and gas exploration in New Zealand. We know that we have to make sure that we've got storage for the times when the sun doesn't shine and the rain doesn't fall and the wind doesn't blow. And we certainly are thinking about alternatives to that.
Anything else? That's it. Thank you, everybody. Oh, can I also just thank Jared, our homeowner, who's very helpfully and kindly lent us his backdrop. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hipkins.
So these guys are from the Solar Energy Association of New Zealand too, if you really need installer kind of perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's probably wishing that he hadn't bothered. But I guess, let's face it, there is a process. Councils can't win. You just can't barge ahead. And if due process isn't followed, then, councils are in the gun, aren't they? So it's a bit of a tough one, that.